Thank you for joining Once Changing the World. I'm your host, Eddie Hackl, and today I'm delighted and honored to have with me Cathy Hackl, who's the founder, author, tech and gaming executive, futurist, podcaster, keynote speaker with expertise in AI, spatial computing, virtual worlds, next-gen consumer experiences, new commerce models, strategic foresight, and gaming platform strategy. Cathy is ex-Magic Leap, HTC Vive, Amazon Web Services, Journey, and others, and currently is a futurist in residence at Nokia, external advisor to BCG's Frontier Tech, and CEO at Future Dynamics. Cathy has authored 5 books, including Into the Metaverse, The Essential Guide to the Business Opportunities of the Web3 Era, The Augmented Workforce, How AI, AR, and 5G Will Impact Every Dollar You Make, and Spatial Computing and AI-Driven Business Revolution. She hosts Adweek's Tech Magic podcast and is known in tech circles as the Godmother of the Metaverse. So Cathy, really appreciate you taking time being part of the podcast. Now, I've been invested in virtual reality since the last 10 years, and I think it's one of the most exciting technologies. And every technology goes through this up and down cycle, and so is Metaverse, right? It's going through this up and down cycle. And just last night, I think Meta just announced a layoff of 1,500 odd folks from their virtual reality division. It's very, very sad to kind of see that you've gone through something like that in you've been Magic Leap. What are your thoughts on this in Metaverse thing? I mean, in this decline thing, you think that there could be like a spark and maybe like a comeback of sorts of Metaverse?
Yeah, so it's a very interesting question, one that a lot of people ask me, right, as the godmother of the metaverse. And it was a title that was given to me by someone at Nike. I will say, to me, the metaverse felt like a rehearsal. Like it was part of the hype cycle. Some of us like you and me that have been in tech for a long time, like we've seen the ups and the downs, the hype cycles, the trough of disillusionment. We've been through it all and we've survived several cycles. So to me, the metaverse was very exciting. Obviously, it got to a level of hype. There was a lot of confusion on what it was. To me, it was a rehearsal, right? Towards that convergence of physical and virtual that we're seeing. And virtual reality for me is one of those technologies that is extremely important towards that future. It's not the only one, right? So what do I think? I mean, I don't know if the metaverse as the original concept that was presented by someone like Meta makes a comeback. I don't think so. Like the way they presented it, it's not the way I viewed it. I viewed it as the convergence of virtual and physical. And whenever I talked about the metaverse, I always talked about glasses. And I talked about how you're going to be expanding computing into the physical world, see the virtual in front of you, kind of accessing that virtual layer. So my perspective on the metaverse was a lot more around spatial computing, spatial web, more so than a fully immersive environment where avatars have no legs, right? So my perspective was quite different. I do think that maybe we're going to call it something different, spatial web or the future of the web. I'm not sure. When you ask me about the layoffs, I'm not surprised because those people are specifically working on certain projects, right? What Meta is finding great success in is smart glasses, like on-device AI. And I was recently at CES, and we're going to talk about CES in a bit. But I had a chance to meet with a lot of the folks there at Meta, and they're having great success with the Meta Ray-Bans, the Meta Ray-Ban displays, which they actually had there in stock because they're sold out everywhere. They're having great success with that. So it makes sense for them to kind of like shift their attention from Quest and VR headsets and that, which is still great technology, into more something that we're going to be able to use on a daily basis. So it makes total sense. And to me, to be honest, AI has been the catalyst, has been kind of like the power that's pushing us to this era of spatial computers on our heads, right? Spatial computers that we wear, that hear things, that we talk to. So for me, it's either or, it's all convergence of different technologies. And I don't think that it's like this technology is better than this one. I just think that they coexist in this moment of convergence. And yeah, like I still believe we get to the metaverse more in the vision that I had, not so much in this fully immersive virtual reality metaverse that was presented to a lot of people.
Right. Yeah. So I think, over the years, this immersive technology, I mean, it's been given so many names, virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, then the umbrella term of extended reality, maybe then Meta pushed Metaverse. And then, there was Magic Leap in pushing spatial computing and Apple doing the same. So I think, there's a lot of these marketing gimmicks, but eventually I think, when you spoke about this tech convergence, when it kind of converges, and that's when the real value or utility kind of comes out. And I'm waiting for that, the time when I can possibly maybe we transition from this 2D flat medium, which kind of restricts us to like a 2D, like a complete 3D world where the entire world becomes a screen. So yes, hopefully maybe we kind of transition into that world. You were at CES 2026, I mean, will will be great if you could share your insights on, what are the things that kind of stood out to you in terms of XR, or any particular things, when it comes to it.
Absolutely. And it's funny with CES because I feel like I've been going for the last 8 or so years, maybe more. I've stopped counting. And every year I'm like, I'm not going to go. And every year I get roped back in. So I go every year and it's really interesting. Also, I get to see all the media previews. I get invited to a lot of like demos behind closed doors, whereas where you actually get to see what's coming, right? To be honest, you'll see a lot of stuff on the show floor, but in these private demos is where you actually get to see like the really interesting thing. You sign NDAs and there's all sorts of stuff. What I will say, a couple of things that's to me definitely from CES, where, for example, they're in the convention center, the Las Vegas Convention Center, where there's a lot of exhibitors. There was an area that was video, audio, and then / gaming XR. So gaming and XR continue to have a really relevant space on the show floor, which to me was very exciting. Glasses everywhere all at once. Glasses everywhere. Yeah, there was like, I've seen a lot of glasses on the show floor. This year was like more and more glasses, bigger exhibits, Rokid, XReal. I mean, Meta had a big presence, not there necessarily, but at events. So lots of push towards smart glasses, all sorts of AI on devices, whether it was like in pins and masks and anything you can imagine. There was AI, which makes sense. All sorts of virtual pets. There was even that was one thing. Also with that came a lot of physical AI, right? So lots of announcements around physical AI from NVIDIA and from different companies. Robots galore. That was another. It was glasses everywhere all at once, robots everywhere all at once. But this is all part of the same conversation. I think people kind of separate all of these. This is about computing, about AI and computing expanding into the physical world, understanding the physical world, executing in the physical world, doing things for you in the physical world, whether it's a robot, whether it's a humanoid robot or a robot lawnmower, or whether it's your glasses working with you, telling you where you need to go, or a hologram helping you, right? So it was really interesting to see that. So in that same space where they had the gaming XR, video, and audio, I got to experience a few things. I got to wear the Rokid glasses, and I got to order a coffee in this makeshift coffee shop that they had, just using my glasses. No card, I didn't use my Apple Pay. Like, it was just my glasses. I just used my glasses, boom, boom, boom. I was like, okay, this is pretty convenient. I love that. I love that, for example, I don't have to carry a wallet anymore. I just carry my phone. But if that can eventually just be glasses, I'm like, okay, I like this. So that was cool. And then I also got to see a robot in the LG booth folding laundry, which I was like, that is what that's what the regular consumers are going to love the glasses, right? Or they might not. But a robot that does your laundry or waters your plants, I'm all for that. Or even a robot that takes care of your pets. It was crazy. So I would say lots of stuff, not so much in the VR hardware space. It was more glasses, so spatial devices, and also a lot of humanoid robots, which is physical AI. So for me, the big takeaway is that push from getting from agentic to embodied AI and then physical AI, which is all part of this convergence moment, and also world models. So the move away from just models that repeat or answer things in using language to models that can actually, these are different architectures, and I'm very bullish on these different architectures, models that can actually simulate the world, kind of create almost a brain for your company or your brand, and start executing and doing things for you in the physical world. So yeah, like it was really fun to be there and kind of see all these sorts of things happening all at once.
Right. Yeah. We're sitting in such a fantastic point of time, and this convergence of technology. You spoke about these world models, and I think that Fei Li, who's working on world models, that Google's Veo 3, and there's so many other world models. And sometimes, it seems magical that, you can just put in a prompt and, voila, you get like a complete 3D world, a 3D which is an interactive, playable world. I mean, this is possibly, it's like 2026, early 2026, at the rate at which, this tech is kind of improving, what's going to happen like the next 3-5 years horizon timeline is obviously is going to be completely crazy. You spoke about physical AI or robotics, and yes, maybe I think, when all of these kind of converges and we have these products which is there in a user's home, adding value where the price points comes down. I think they'll be really cool. As you spoke about glasses, I think the vision is like, eventually I think this phone and a computer kind of converges into one single wearable device, so you don't have to carry technology, you'll be wearing technology. So, what are your thoughts on something like that? And specifically, somebody who's been Magic Leap and has seen the ups and downs of the hardware challenges. What are your thoughts on the
Hardware is
of this
hard.
interface? Yeah, now
For sure.
yeah.
Hardware is hard. I'll say two things. So, in one of the panels that I was on around fashion in the future, wearables and devices, I can't remember who said it, but it said technology is something you carry, fashion is something you wear. And I feel like I've done a lot of work in the fashion space, as you probably know as well. I'm a guest editor at Vogue Singapore. I've launched my own jewelry collection. I've dressed all sorts of celebrity avatars. So that's like a separate side of who I am. But I do think that there's this moment, right, where we're starting to see more of that fashionable look of these devices. And I don't know if it's only going to be one form factor. I think we're going to have maybe, glasses, pins, like different things. There'll be different things, different form factors. I don't know if one form factor, wins over everything. We'll have to see. Like, that's where it remains to be seen. So I think you're going to see a lot of different propositions because even at the show, there was like glasses, but there were earrings, there were bracelets, there were rings, there were tennis shoes, like all sorts of things, right? So what is the form factor? I don't know. I do feel like obviously Silicon Valley and the biggest companies are pushing us towards some type of head mounted display, right? So that will probably be one of the things that we use. But you also have potentially, Johnny Ive and Sam Altman at OpenAI bringing some type of audio first device that won't be up in our head. So I think it'll all depend. We'll have to see. I mean, you bring up Magic Leap, which I think is super relevant in this conversation because I have been in this space for more than a decade, and I've worked in hardware, in especially like Magic Leap, for example, HTC Vive VR headsets, right? But in Magic Leap, that was the initial spatial computer, the initial vision. And that's where my vision of the metaverse came. It didn't come from Meta and VR. It came from Magic Leap. So, and Magic Leap has gone through a lot of ups and downs, from the cover of Wired as the most promising startup and the OpenAI of its time to, not being that relevant in the conversation. So I've seen it all. So I think we're going to see a lot of different hardware. Some of it is going to succeed. A lot of it is going to fail. Right? A lot of it is going to fail, but we are in this new era of hardware. Even if you look at a company like Meta or Snap, I think, or Apple, I mean, Apple's known for their hardware, right? But I feel like Meta's in its hardware era. Like, this is the reality. They don't want to just own the application layer, the software layer. They want to own the hardware layer, where they missed out last time. So it makes total sense for the investments that they're making in smart glasses and what they're seeing succeed, right? You've got Snap as well, who's announced that they're launching new spectacles this year. And I think you're going to see a big push from them in hardware as well. I'm really excited about what they're doing. I'm a big believer in that company. I think they're just amazing. Keep your eye out for them. You've got Google getting back into it. You got all these companies, right? And even Apple with the Vision Pro, and I'm a Vision Pro developer, is, using everything they learned from the Vision Pro, which is an amazing piece of hardware. Was it very useful? Did it have a product market fit? And, we'll talk about enterprise. But I do think that, everything they've learned with the Vision Pro, they can port that into glasses that are more useful, lighter, more fashionable. You got a slam dunk. So it's the hardware era. Hardware, and this is, Eddie, I think what's lost in the conversation, what a lot of people don't realize because they're not in our space, is that whoever owns the hardware has access to that data, the data of the physical world that constantly scans that physical world. That in itself is gold. That in itself is oil. That type of data that I can't get from OpenAI from talking to my thing, or showing it a photo. This is real world data scanned on a constant basis through these devices. That is the new oil.
So beautifully put, because I think the world is going to realize that soon as we get these devices, and whatever those device form factor could be, you mentioned about Johnny Ive and OpenAI possibly doing like a non-intrusive device, because I guess we all know that what's a mobile done to the current generation. There's so many pros, but there's so many cons also. So I'm sure these companies are like taking these very careful strategic steps in creating the next generation of these hardware which is non-intrusive, and you rightfully pointed out, when we have these devices, with all of these cameras, wherever you walk, whatever you look at, we're collecting all of those data, and that data is going to be so awesome, like you said, the true oil for the machines to become more intelligent. And I guess, yes, I think maybe that is so very exciting, and I hope people understand that that's the path that we are getting on. And you mentioned that there's so many companies who kind of trying to build these hardware spaces. So yes, there's going to be all different kind of form factors of all different devices, and all of those data which is going to be collected. That's going to be all the oil for the next gen AI, building possibly machines which are general purpose intelligence. Now obviously, because of AI, there's a certain group of people, be it creators, be it the workforce, everybody's kind of worried, like that AI will come in and kind of take away all your jobs. But AI, on the other hand, if you see, is kind of like possibly democratizing thing, because earlier what could only be done by like a specialist can be done by anyone. Today, you could just you might not know coding, and you just sit in front of the computer, put in your prompts, your thoughts, and voila, you get like a full-fledged application. So you're getting into a fantastic future. You spoke about these world models, these world models, eventually, if you just put in like an image, and you get like a playable video, and you can prompt in, add the augment things, you can actually start designing worlds. So what are your thoughts on this, this XR plus AI convergence? Like, is it going to disrupt things, or is it going to be like an opportunity where it's going to democratize things and going to bring in more developers, more consumers in the space?
I think it's going to democratize it. I think more now more than ever, you've got new developers coming into the fray that weren't developing in XR, and now they can because of AI, right? So, because developing for XR for a long time was very, very hard, right? Very hard. And I feel like now it's getting easier. So you've got more and more people that are coming to develop in XR. I don't remember who I was speaking to, but recently they told me that in one of the developer programs, like the majority of the developers that signed up were first time developers. This is XR, right? And I was like, that makes me super excited, because it's like, wow, people that weren't developing for XR now feel supercharged with AI. So we got this moment, right? When we think about democratization of this technology and what it allows us to do, here's the mindset shift, right? And I'm going to put my futurist hat here, is that I think it was Don Allen Stevenson III. I can't remember who said this, where I heard this from, but it was a fantastic quote. And they said, in the future, it's, the idea and the concept of the job changes, not the idea of work. We will continue to do work. That work will change. What will it mean to do work, right? I think that's going to change, right? We're probably going to co-work with AIs and agents and work inside virtual environments and like do simulations, like all these sorts of things. But the idea of the 9-to-5 job, or the whatever type of job where you go to a desk, sit down and like do this, unless it's that kind of physical work, like it's going to change. And even in the physical world, it will change, because you will have devices, right, that will help you, augment you as a worker. So I think it's important for people to understand it is a conversation about democratization, but also a conversation about the shift in mindset that needs to happen for humans, for all of us on the planet, from job to work. What is work and what is job, right? Job is going to change. The jobs that we have now, 9-to-5, are not the jobs that people used to do back in the past, right? Work was different. Work was labor, hard labor. You were in the fields for hours and hours. Like, it was very different. So I think we're at that moment right now. We're at a moment where the concept of work and job changes, and we are at an inflection point in the next 20 years of a massive economic opportunity and change, right? So that paired with huge geopolitical changes happening across the world, it's really interesting to watch. And Eddie, I'll tell you this, because I know you're based in Goa, like you told me. I have spent the last year and a half of my life traveling constantly across the global south and also the GCC region. So the Gulf, like UAE, Emirates, Qatar, KSA, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, like that region, because I truly do believe that innovation happens in these areas. There's a younger demographic, huge opportunity, early adopters, huge appetite for this technology, right? And what I'm seeing is that, yes, I live in the US and capital still lives in Silicon Valley. Some innovation still, a lot of innovation still happens there. I live in DC. DC is where governance, policy, all these sorts of things are discussed, even technology. But I feel that capital is also moving to the UAE and KSA. And implementation, large world scale implementation of AI and these technologies is happening in the global south, places like India, places like the UAE and KSA, South Africa. Like the perspective that a lot of people have that is incredibly US centric, and I love the United States, I think also has to change.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's an exciting period that we are in. There's like a global shift of sorts, though, globally, the geopolitically, you have countries with aggressive leaders, including mine, going bonkers. And I hope that, we are more inclusive than, my thinking was, that we live in a hyper-connected world and we would go more outwards and there would be more collaboration. But if you see like countries like India, including and China and many others are going inwards, and protecting their own, startups rather than, collaborating. But I really hope that, we really collaborate and the entire world kind of reaches out and, starts innovating in a way where it kind of benefits each other and because from in my perspective, I see that right now, because of this technological race that we are in, each nation is trying to like race ahead of the other, and we going towards like almost like a global arms race, with this AI. I hope that kind of changes. But yes, I think exciting things happening in India. You spoke about UAE and in lots of places, but yes, I hope that there's more collaboration, because I think in collaboration we can grow the entire ecosystem and push things forward. You've been invested in enterprise, you've done quite a lot of very, very interesting projects, and right now I think, enterprise is like, playing a wait and watch game, at least here in India, because of the entire narrative which is going around. Where do you think the real value lies, with XR and AI today for enterprise?
There's still so much to be gained in enterprise, right? When it comes to productivity, cutting down time. This is the other thing. I feel like XR has always thrived in the enterprise and even in defense, right? I feel like those two sectors that XR has always kind of thrived in. But I think with the infusion of AI, right, into a lot of these devices, it's kind of hypercharged the use of it, right? And the opportunities within sectors. So as an advisor to Boston Consulting Group's Frontier Technology team, one of the projects that they worked on was with Swiss Rail. And this is actually public information. It's available out there. But they use Swiss Rail conduct, like people that work in Swiss Rail, and equip them with XR devices that use some AI to help with repairs and training. And the numbers were astounding. I think it was like a 20%. I can't remember what the percentages are, but it was between 20 and 30% efficiencies gained. And that amounted to X amount of millions of dollars a year. I don't have the data in front of me, right? But I think that there's data that proves that this is technology that augments your worker, that allows your workers to do great work, to do it faster, to save the company money. And it's important for two reasons. One, a lot of these like developed, let's call them like developed nations or whatever you want to call them, a lot of the population is aging out. So a lot of people that were doing this type of work are becoming older, they're retiring. With them, they are taking a lot of that institutional knowledge, right? And while people are like, robots are going to end up doing everything, well, not right now. And I don't know if they ever will do everything, right? So you still need to be able to train your workers to augment your workers, and the augmented workforce is kind of pretty much this premise. to be able to do these sorts of things and augment them. So it's interesting because when people ask me about the future, they're like, "What is the future of Ready Player One?" People are obsessed with Ready Player One. I'm like, God, no. I love Ready Player One. I love Ernie Klein. I think it's a fantastic novel. But if you take it, it's the essence of a dystopic world where people live in like these containers and go spend time in VR because the world is so horrible. That's not what I want. I think the future is more Jarvis from Tony Stark in the Marvel movies, Iron Man, where the human co-works with the AI to find solutions, to create things, to build things. That to me is a better representation of the future that we're heading into, not this one. So in enterprise, if you take that from a perspective, there's a lot to be gained, a lot of efficiencies, a lot of training, a lot of ways to augment your workers, and that will translate into dollars, saving dollars definitely for a company.
There's some exciting things happening here in India. There's the startup called Autoverse doing a whole lot of stuff. And it's not just Autoverse, it's just one startup which I kind of named, but there's so many startups who are like tying up with enterprise and building stuff, building stuff in for defense, the government. So, and I hope that the kind of the narrative of metaverse is dead kind of, dies down. And, there's more kind of narratives of like, there is actually great work happening, where there's a lot of adoption which is going on specifically in the enterprise space. Now, you already gave like a brief overview of your book, The Augmented Workforce. Now, you've written 5 books, and it will be great if you could give us an overview of the book and what are the takeaways, for into the metaverse, spatial computing also.
So I'll tell you this. So The Augmented Workforce, that to me was a prescient book. Like really, it was prescient. We were talking about augmenting workers, AI before it was cool. Before ChatGPT, right? So I feel very, very lucky to have been really at the early stages of that conversation of how AI works on device and what it can do for you. Into the Metaverse obviously talks more about that virtual layer, that gaming space, the opportunities emerging physical and physical and virtual. Spatial computing, which is the last book I put out, it really came out around the same time as the Apple Vision Pro, so very much aligned to that. And it's called Spatial Computing and AI Business Revolution, because in order for us to expand computing into the physical world and do everything that these new devices want to do, whether it's audio or vision or video, you need to have computing that understands space, so spatial, right? And that book, I think, is a very powerful book. It came out at the same time as the Vision Pro. The Vision Pro didn't do that well, so the book didn't really find a greater audience, but I hope more people read it because it is a treasure trove of information as you look towards this future, right? So I highly recommend it to people. And then I also have a free, let's call it an ebook. It's not a downloadable PDF. It's just a book that lives on the internet. It's a free resource for anyone that wants to read it. It's super simple. It's very fun. It's called awearableworld.com. It's free. Anyone can read it, and it is pretty much about the future of XR AI glasses. So definitely check out that as a resource. It's a free book for anyone. If you want to buy spatial computing, please do, but you also have a free resource.
Thank you for sharing that. I'll also link it for my audience over here. XR and AI. What's the future of education going to look like? Once this kind of converges.
I'm excited about it. I'm really excited. I think. The big example that I always give is what if you're studying about ancient Egypt, but you can actually visit, right, ancient Egypt and have a class with Cleopatra or whoever, right? I think you can actually go inside the pyramids and see these things. So I think there's an immersiveness that happens with XR. And if you add AI, when you can have these virtual humans, right, that gets really exciting. It's interesting because I feel like people are always thinking about robots, but my mind, I love robots and I'm doing interesting work in that space, but I also I did a lot of work around holograms, right? Volumetric video and holograms, all these sorts of things. I think that is where there's going to be so much opportunity because when I do that lesson, that virtual Cleopatra will be powered by AI that will teach me the class, right? Or the virtual powered archaeologist that has passed that is most knowledgeable about X, right? Will be powered by AI, and I'll see them in hologram form, not in robotic form. It'll be embodied AI. But this is where I think it gets interesting is because the future of education will have to do with human-centered AI. AI that is there to serve us, to help educate us, to teach us, right? I feel like everyone's like thinking general, large language models and how we're losing intelligence because we're offloading everything. But what if we actually take that technology, make it human centered, and it teaches us, right? It teaches us because it has access to. It's like having access to, back in the day, the Library of Alexandria, all those books, right? Back in the day, it's like having access to all the information out there. Some good or bad, depending on how they train the model, right? But it can actually teach us if we make it human centered, where we're just not asking it to create something, like to do things for us on our behalf, or like offloading that, but actually teaching us. I think it's very powerful. And I'll give you an example. And I had this conversation with my daughter who's 15. She's in high school. She doesn't love AI. She's like, oh, Mom, I don't like AI because of this, and this, like the environment. And then she's like, I feel like people are becoming more stupid. And I said, I'll tell you how I use it. Let's say I want to learn about something. Like I want to upskill my level, or like really become, kind of become more knowledgeable of something. I'm an avid learner. I'm always trying to learn. So what I do is I use something called Notebook LM, which is from Google. And I put in like YouTube videos, and I put articles or journal art, like journal publishing, like a whole bunch of different things that I think are valuable or credible sources. I put it in there, and then I ask it to create either a handout or a podcast that I can listen to, right? And I learn, and it teaches me things that are already coming from the stuff I wanted to consume. So it depends on how you use this technology. If I'm only using it to offload my brain, and I don't think, that's not great from an education perspective. But if I am using it in a human-centered way to teach me, to help me become more knowledgeable, that is, I think, the flip side of how we need to start to use this AI.
You actually pointed out in today's world, there's so much information. It's obviously it's your choice, how you kind of funnel it and use AI to educate yourself and learn. Because how awesome it is that today you have the opportunity to kind of, have a teacher like maybe Albert Einstein, bring him back, because, these large language models have already done that. He can become your personal tutor, or any, teacher in the world. Because these LLMs have been taught on the entire world's, data. It's so awesome to think that if you want, you can be sitting at any part of the world. All that you need is basically internet and these access to these models, which are anyway, free. Most of them are free. So what is stopping us is just our desire and intent. So the education is already out there. The data, information, these LLM models, they provide you everything. So I guess, yes, I think we're sitting in a fantastic part of the world. And like I said, the only thing that stops anyone today is the desire and intent. So Cathy, you worked for quite a lot of brands, like from Nike, Walmart, Louis Vuitton, many, many others. It will be great if you could share some of your past projects, some works that you're proud of, and if there's anything that you're working on right now currently, which is coming, it would be great if you could talk about that.
These brands, they're very different, right? Louis Vuitton and Walmart, you can't be more different right there. I love their appetite for emerging technology. I've been honored to help a lot of these Fortune 100 companies do amazing work. Some of my favorite projects, oh my gosh, I did a lot of work with Walmart for about 2 years, working very, very close to their team there, and helped them build their first 2 worlds in Roblox. I actually introduced the Walmart team to Roblox. I created that connection. So started working with them on creating these worlds, starting to figure out how to start to create the rails to do physical world commerce in virtual spaces, which now is possible. So I feel very proud that that's something that I helped create. And with Walmart, I also produced a virtual concert with 3 celebrities. I dressed their avatars. So I've had a chance to do like mind-blowing things I never had in my bingo card. Never had that in my bingo card. What am I excited about? I'm working on 2 stealth startups right now that I think one of them is in the world model space and one of them is more in the physical AI space. And I'm very excited about what's coming. I'm very bullish about the future. I'm also very excited because I'm spending my time between DC and Dubai and Riyadh. A lot more time in the GCC, and I see immense opportunities. I see a lot of hope also in the region, an appetite for the future, for things we can build in the future. So that keeps me exciting. So yeah, just stay tuned. I have a lot of things coming. A lot of stuff, and definitely keep your eyes out on my social. I'm pushing a lot of video this year. I'm trying to bring as much value to people as I can, like the free book that I mentioned. I want to give back because I've been so lucky. I have been so lucky the last couple of years. So I want to kind of give back a little bit this year.
Thank you for doing that. In fact, I'm on your WhatsApp group. I'm going to share the link also, for people to jump in and join that link, which is very, very useful. So earlier in the course of the conversation, we spoke about this convergence of technology, and we're seeing convergence of sorts with XR, with brain-computer interfaces, XR with Neurotech, and brain-computer interfaces, these invasive as well as non-invasive BCIs are becoming more and more potential. There are these invasive BCIs, we've gone beyond these 1,000 microelectrode arrays where we do two-way communication, where we send information as well as decode information. And there are various companies who are working with this XR plus brain-computer interfaces. There's OpenBCI, who's building like a virtual reality with a brain-computer interfaces. There's Vario, which is working on a BCI VR. There's Valve VR, which is working on something like that. And there's obviously Meta, which has already launched their neural interface with their Ray-Ban glasses. So this XR plus Neurotech convergence, obviously, I think it's going to be like very, very potential eventually when it kind of, really evolves, though it's like in a very, very nascent stage at this point of time. So what are your thoughts about this, this XR plus Neurotech convergence? What's the biggest opportunity over there? And is it something that kind of worries you because you think that eventually if it evolves, there might be some ethical risk that you need to kind of like really, really watch out for?
So here's what I'll say, and I wish I'd have brought down my Ray-Ban displays because they have the bracelet, the neural bracelet that allows you to control the device, etc. Does it worry me? I don't know if it worries me. I think the folks at companies like Neurable is not Neuralink. Neurable is a different company. It's run by my friend Ramses Alcalde. So they're doing fantastic work when it comes to using this technology to make us more focused, make us feel better, make us more productive. And I've got it here. Let me pull it up just to give them a shout out. But yeah, this is their headset. Yeah, Neuro headphones. Because they used to have this helmet. The first time I ever did any brain computer interface was with them, where I was able to move things with just my thoughts, right? So, I think we're going to see a lot more of that. Of how can we use our brain power? To me, the world's most important supercomputer is our brain, right? So, like, we still haven't even tapped into what our brains can do. So yeah, I think intelligence in that sense is an interesting conversation. I'm excited about it. BCI, brain computer interfaces and neural interfaces, don't keep me up at night as much as, because you asked me about what worries me, as virtual air rights. And what I mean by that is, and it probably just keeps me up at night, doesn't keep anyone else up at night, but this is a conversation I'm having with a lot of like future forward governments and things, is like, when we do have, whether it's pins, glasses, rings, whatever it is, when this becomes truly mainstream and most people are using them, what worries me is because, yeah, the world becomes a canvas, which is nice, but it also becomes real estate. So whatever is within earshot and eyesight of you becomes real estate. It becomes the billboard. So that worries me, right? Because it's like, how do we protect what we can see? I want everyone to think about this. If you are wearing glasses and those glasses are XR and AI glasses or whatever you want to call them, who owns the air around you? Who owns that? Who owns what you're going to see? Because right now, if I go to Times Square, I can look at the billboard or not look at it. Nothing happens. But when it's something virtual that is going to pop up in front of my eyes, who controls that? Who owns the air around you? Who owns the virtual air rights? So that is something that to this day still makes me uncomfortable. Maybe we'll need sanctuary areas where there's no content, audio and visual, that allow humans to disconnect. So just some futuristic thinking for people out there, the things that worry me about that future. There's also conversations around BCI. Who owns your brainwaves? What do you think? Do you own it? Does a corporation own it because they have a device? So there's actually like laws in, I think it's Colorado, that has a law saying that you own your own brainwaves. So lots of question marks for the future.
Right. Yeah. There's this beautiful film by Kiichi Matsuda, Hyper Reality, and it kind of gives you or shows you that little dystopian vision, like what happens, when your entire field of vision is kind of overloaded with content. Yeah, surely we don't want to go to a place like that. Now, virtual reality, I've been fascinated by full live virtual reality, because so far, at this point in time, we've kind of managed to kind of, simulate, two modalities, visual and audio. Audio, we can do it pretty well with spatial and ambisonic sound. Visual, yes, we managed to kind of, like create this like complete, visual clarity or depth of, the virtual reality. But that again, those are just two modalities. And then we humans, we've got five senses: sight, sound, touch, smell, taste, and with these brain computer interfaces, like you spoke about, there's just so many companies, there Neuralink, and there's so many others who are kind of creating this two-way brain computer interfaces where you don't just you don't just copy the brain data, but you also kind of send signals back to it. And there are these people such as David Chalmers, who's written like a fantastic book called Reality Plus, and there's Donald Hoffman, who's written a book called Case Against Reality. And Donald Hoffman, in fact, has like partnered with this physicist called Nima Hamid Arkani. And Nima Hamid Arkani and Donald Hoffman posits, they say that the entire space-time is basically just like a virtual reality headset. I mean that, and the entire world is basically like a simulation. So somebody who's been been thinking about full live virtual reality, I think that eventually maybe we'll be able to kind of build these virtual worlds which might be indistinguishable from reality. Possibly when we have these brain computer interfaces, maybe you push it further. I'm not saying like it's a good thing, but I think technology always kind of like accelerates, and we humans are always kind of tinkering around, and we'll keep on doing this, and eventually I feel that maybe we'll go towards that, what we call that full dive virtual reality. What are your thoughts on that? You think that we could develop like full dive virtual reality where you can't distinguish between what is virtual and what is real? And then what is your second question is, what is your thoughts on people like Elon Musk and many others who say that the entire world is anyway like a simulation? Do you think we live in a simulation?
Well, I do have moments throughout the day where I'm like, is there a glitch in the matrix? Because like, what's going on? Like, am I getting punked, or is there a glitch in the matrix? I do have moments like that. I don't know if we're in a simulation. If we are, I've had a pretty good one. So like, I can't complain. That's a really, I think, existential question. I'm still working through what I think about it. I'm going to be honest, because I don't want to get spiritual or anything, but I've started practicing Kabbalah for about now 10 months. And there's a lot of thoughts around there about, destiny is predetermined. Just there's multiple destinies, right? It depends on where your soul is and how elevated you are, which destiny you go into. So I'm not sure if it's a simulation as in ones and zeros, right? I'm still thinking through that from a spiritual standpoint. What I will say is that there is great use. We can use simulation technology for robots, for all sorts of things, for medical, like simulating something before it actually gets on a patient. He's huge. So I think simulation does have to be something negative, right? It can be viewed as something positive. So I'm really excited. Would I want the virtual world to be as real as the physical world? No, I still want to differentiate both of them between both of them. Right. Even in the fashion space, this is what I say. It's like, I want to wear the glasses and I want my clothes to look a certain way, but maybe they look different in through these devices. Like, do I want them to look the same? I don't know. I don't know if I do. I do think we are at a moment in time where you should double down on human. Human is, for me, human is a premium. Human is the luxury. Right. And the joke I have, and I say this on stage all the time, is that I think it was Gary Vee that was saying that maybe in the future we'll pay people to walk with us. So are we moving from OnlyFans to Only Walks, right? Where you actually pay someone to walk with you. So I don't know if we're in a simulation. That I'm still kind of pondering what that truly means. I do think simulation doesn't have to be viewed necessarily as a negative thing. And I will double down on human. I think human is the luxury. Human is the premium. IRL, yeah. Like there's still things I want to do IRL. I still want to spend time with my kids IRL. So.
Yeah. So when COVID happened, we were all excited about the metaverse thing, and we were kind of pushing that. Okay, let's kind of push everything kind of virtual, and then I've been invested in XR for the last 10 years, and then kind of you realize, do you actually even want something like that? What happens if we kind of create a world which is indistinguishable from reality? Because even right now, this mobiles and in screen time, I have a 10-year-old son, and he's kind of addicted to, I think it's not just my 10-year-old son. I think that age group is kind of living in virtual worlds already, because they have these friends, they kind of meet in these virtual worlds, these, Minecrafts and Roblox, and that's where they kind of spend most of the time, and he's spending more and more time on that. And sometimes it gets kind of scary that, because as a parent you want him to go out and play and experience, because I've grown up playing football and cricket and, uh, go, climbing mountains, going to the beaches and stuff like that, so but I think this generation is kind of missing out on that, and so yes, you've been invested in this technology, but you kind of worry that, at the pace at which the world is kind of moving, where you're seeing early signs or the glimpse of the new generation who are so like possibly addicted to these mediums, and these mediums are 2D mediums, and they are not even 3D mediums. And but eventually, with virtual reality, augmented reality, mixed reality, where possibly maybe we have these devices which kind of immerses you into these virtual worlds, and these immersion can become like more and more realistic, because I guess that's the way things have happened, as technologists and companies, what we try and do is kind of build technology which kind of immerses you further, because that's where take you more towards the attention is the money. And so you definitely don't want a world like that. Now, you are the futurist in residence at Nokia. Will be great if you could, paint a picture of like, what the world's going to look like, possibly by 2030, because you spoke about world models, you spoke about AI agents, with these conversations about us building, possibly general purpose machines. What's your intuit? What's the world going to look like in the next 5 years by the end of 2030 and beyond?
So I will say, and I love the work I'm doing with Nokia. It is an external role, but I am their futurist in residence, which has been really exciting. I don't know if I have enough time to paint the picture of what the world will look like. I will say two things. First is that a lot of the conversation right now in technology is around compute, chips, compute, data centers, and everything. And I think that's really important. But the cost of that will eventually start to go down. What is going to be incredibly important and where the conversation is going to shift is connectivity. Because in order for all these robots to work, all these potential devices to work, you need connectivity at levels we've never seen, and that currently does not exist, right? That's where companies like Nokia, who are create infrastructure, Melanie, create and have these networks, like they're going to be the ones that are actually going to be able to allow us to have that connected intelligence. So if people follow the news, they know that Nokia got a $1 billion investment from NVIDIA. I was very lucky to be at GTC, the Super Bowl of AI, with Jensen and Justin Hotard, the president and CEO of Nokia, for the announcement. I think connectivity is a huge factor that will be even more important as we move forward, especially as compute starts to decrease in price eventually. So one of the things I think as we head to 2030, definitely thinking about connectivity in our world. And then I think the biggest thing I can tell you for that is I want the listeners to think in their mind's eye of 2030, 2035 maybe, and think about their family photo. All right, so now that they thought about it, come back to us. Was there a robot in that picture? Like the Jetsons that had Rosie? Is there a hologram? Is there a hologram of someone that passed away already? Is there a virtual friend? Is there a cloned pet? I think thinking about that is how you start to figure out what that future could look like. Who would you want in your family photo? Who do you think you might have in your family photo? Right? So I don't think I can paint necessarily the picture, but I think everyone can paint a picture for themselves of what that potential future could look like.
Right. Kathy, my last question to you. What's your personal moonshot? And for the listeners, what would be your advice? How do they navigate this future, which is, looks very, very uncertain?
I've got a personal moonshot I'm working on that I'll be talking about soon. So don't want to disclose it yet, but I'm excited about the future. I'm excited. I'm excited to give back to everyone, to bring value, continue to do that, which I've been doing for years, but I want to do it more this year. This is my year of collaborations. 2026 is my year of collaborations. It's the year I launched my biggest moonshot ever as well. And my advice to anyone here is like, what an amazing, we're standing in front a moment of possibilities. And what a better time, what an exciting time to build, to go and do something. You are hyper, like it's a catalyst. Like there's an opportunity for you to be hyper productive and also hyper creative and build new things. So I would say that. And then for anyone listening to this that might be dabbling in AI, they might be using ChatGPT, but are not really creating things, use Claude Code or use like a vibe coding tool like Lovable and spend a weekend trying to create something. Everyone has an idea of something like, oh, I wish they had this, or I wish they created, even if it looks like Frankenstein at the end, at the end of the weekend, spend a weekend trying to build something. And I think that that'll start to build that muscle that people need. And yeah, I don't know. I'm excited about 2026 and what's coming.
Thank you, Cathy, for taking time and being part of the podcast. And thank you for doing everything that you have done for Metaverse. Please keep on doing that, because we need more voice such as yourself to kind of keep on pushing the conversation of and not just XR, but all the technology put together. So more power to you, and to my listeners. If you like what you're seeing in here, then please press the subscribe button. Until next time, see you guys. Bye bye. Thank you, Cathy. Really appreciate this. Yeah, thank you.